I gotta check my disk space again.
Braz,
Yeah, what's mine
buddy,
like actually?
I have so many hard drives for you, and you just torture me.
You know what happened is I got the new update for City Skylines 2, and it
Oh,
annihilated my primary drive.
Okay. Well, I actually do retract my statement. You're still a foolish boy, but
That's true.
All right, I got enough space.
You got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I have space for 288 hours of recording. So if we get
so
to
half
like
this
280,
episode.
yeah, if we get to the 280 mark, just sort of like give me a little like signal, and I'll kind of wind it
Then
up.
we would have killed Seamus again.
Yeah.
I'm hardy.
All right. Well, in that case, we seem to all be here.
Yes.
Everything is going. Let's do a podcast. Hello, and welcome to Well, There's Your Problem. It's a podcast about engineering disasters with slides. I'm Justin Rosniak. I'm the person who's talking right now. My pronouns are he and him. Okay, go.
I'm Alice Caldwell-Kelly. I'm the person who's talking now. My pronouns are she and her. Yay, Liam.
Yay, Liam. Hi. Sorry, I cut you off a little there.
Right.
Hi, I'm Liam Anderson. My pronouns are he and him. And we have a guest.
We have a guest.
Hi, I'm Seamus Malagafzeli, and my pronouns are, of course, he and him.
Astonishingly, Seamus is back after we tortured him on the last time he was here.
Yes.
Look, Stockholm Syndrome, I think, is a beautiful, observable mental phenomenon, and I would love to support future studies on this in the future.
We didn't even give you Stockholm Syndrome. We gave you like Neom Syndrome, which is like Stockholm Syndrome, but worse.
The line. The line. All I can think of, when I close my eyes, I see the line.
I specifically, and this is something that's been put on the back burner for now, but I specifically went to Venice, the beautiful, gorgeous city of Venice, specifically to see the Neom exhibition. Venice was secondary. This is what it still has its hold on me.
Yeah. You went to the Biennale they had for it, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh, God.
Wait, did they have a Biennale specifically for Neom?
They had something. It was some kind of like architectural fest, Neon Fest. You know,
it was an exhibition of like. I mean, I talked to Ross specifically about this. Like, they had a bunch of different architectural, mock-ups of parts of Neom, parts of the line, and they all told the public, like, "Hey, go and see what they're building in Saudi Arabia." There were lots of people there, which kind of shocked me.
Everyone wants to go see some conceptual architecture.
Who does not want to see the line?
Yeah, who doesn't want to see what the sort of like AI recombinated Zaha Hadid is doing right now?
Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen. Is they're gonna reanimate Zaha Hadid.
I mean,
with
that
AI,
woman is basically a Force ghost already. Like,
I was about to say, yeah,
the things they've done to her name.
That's what still all the buildings look like. All the new buildings still look like, or the architecturally significant new buildings. They all just look like Zaha Hadid. I don't get it.
Yeah. if you were going to be like, what's the 21st century going to look like? At least at the start, we've settled on an art style for the moment, an architecture style.
The firm still has her name on it, even though she's dead. That's like not normal for architecture.
Yeah, it's like when they're finding like B-sides and rarities and like unreleased material.
Oh, it's released in mono. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you guys like wacky surface materials and also glass in places that shouldn't be glass?
Yeah,
sure
I live in a
do.
Zaha Hadid bootleg. There's a giant shard of glass that just like perfectly comes down through the center of my kitchen. Every morning I like slice an artery on it by accident. Yeah.
So what you see on the screen here is a large crater and the remains of a concrete grain elevator and the city of Beirut.
And a lot of grain.
Yes, and a lot of grain on the ground. It's not supposed to look like that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's actually supposed to be a warehouse here.
Beirut's supposed to be a lot more glazed. And that straight line of the port, you can see that's supposed to like extend all the way down instead of there's a giant crater in it.
Oh.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about the 2020 Beirut port explosion.
Yes.
Yes.
I
I was waiting for
Jesus.
a response there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. there isn't really like kind of like a joke I can make. It's just kind of like
No.
This is just
it's just kind of
tragic
horrible
and sad.
Yeah, it's true.
It's,
That's true.
put this on the little playlist with Bhopal as like the sad and angry episodes.
Well, at the very least, there won't be a jarring shift in tone when we do the goddamn news.
So this is a fascinating bit here. Because I'm recording remotely from a hotel room, I don't have the drops. So we have two options here, and I leave them at
Do it
Devon's discretion.
ourselves.
Either add the thing, or we just news-related noises. Yeah.
All right.
Jesus.
So
Oh, we are batting 1,000 today, huh?
yeah.
High energy, you know.
So someone blew up a hospital in Gaza.
Yeah, although
Yeah.
on Twitter, people are currently arguing about every single aspect of this, including whether there was a hospital blown up, whether there was a hospital there in the first place.
Yeah.
Is Gaza real? Are any of us even alive? What is truth? You
What
know?
is truth?
What is truth?
Sort of triumph for
mean,
subjectivity.
there seems to be. Oh yeah. Of course, Ross, keep going.
I was just going to say now, since we release these episodes usually about a week after we record them, all of our takes will age like milk.
We perfectly set this up to be exactly and publicly wrong about anything that happens. It's so smart of us.
Yes.
Man.
If I can attempt to strike some sort of balance in
Please.
which the show will be able to age at least somewhat well. At the moment, I would say that I should climb down from my assertion, at least yesterday, that this was an airstrike. I've been seeing theories that make more sense that this was either a drone strike of some kind or an anti-air defense system in Israel that went haywire. It would make more sense considering the video that we have of it, which shows a missile like speeding toward the hospital courtyard. And
Whatever it
impacting
is,
with
it
great
came
deal
in
of
hot.
force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a bit more sense to me, also considering the crater that I think is in there, which is obscured by this angle, but is more clear
Somewhere
in other
like
photos of
around
it.
here. Yeah.
It's not a big crater.
A lot of people are saying that it just doesn't exist. That it's just if actually 500 people or whatever didn't die, and what happened is somebody like burned out like a dozen cars. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which would be nice, I guess. You know.
It would have been ideal. But there's better pictures of it that show the crater, however small it is, and I would agree it doesn't match up with the traditional IDF ordnance, mainly because, if I can go to the other side here, there are assertions that I've been seeing in the Iranian papers this morning that specifically an MK-84 bomb was what was dropped on the courtyard. And I don't know if anyone here is like a military ordnance, guy, gal. But an
not really.
MK-84, if you just go on Google, I mean, this is easily seeable. The crater created by an MK-84 would have blown the hospital completely out of existence. It's about 1,000, 2,000 pounds of ordnance. I really was not that kind of bomb that was dropped on it, if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, in the sort of moments before any footage or images came out, that's kind of what I think everyone assumed had happened.
Yeah, it's like, how are you going to kill 500 people if you don't level the hospital? Well, it turned out apparently there's a lot of people sheltering in this courtyard where whatever it is hit. So that's not exceptional. And then you got all these cars burned out. Presumably there was a parking lot fire afterwards. The crater is actually very small. So you could sort of see how one of those tiny little Hamas bottle rockets could have done that. But, the other thing is, there does seem to be, even then, still a little more damage than you usually see from a Hamas, tiny little rocket. I mean, there's a lot more windows blown out. There's a lot more, the damage is a little bit more extensive, but it seems too small for Israeli JDAM airstrike,
I feel like, Alice, please.
No, go ahead.
I think, I hate to use this phrase because it sounds very like Aaron Sorkin-y, But I think the truth here is probably somewhere in the middle, in that likely, if the story that seemed most likely to me was about the anti-aircraft from Israel going haywire in some way, maybe it locked on to the hospital in some form or another from the heat generated by it.
Just like really, really getting the sort of Iron Dome brief wrong and being like, looking at a hospital, is this a Qassam rocket?
Yeah, and in addition to that, again, the things that Israel is asserting is, and also the OSINT Twitter narrative that is going around that it was like a fragmented piece of a rocket.
What?
Doesn't make sense.
Clearly wrong.
But also, but then the IDF narrative is that it was a PIJ Islamic Jihad rocket that misfired. I don't know what the angle of that would be. That doesn't really make sense, considering how directional that is. I don't know.
You wouldn't think it would come in that hot,
The IDF were like being really like weirdly cagey about this too. Like for a minute, the sort of like assumption that like every like crank Israeli war blogger with a blue tick made in the first moments was like, we hit a hospital, we're not sorry, suck it from the back. And then in the sort of like hours after that, it then shifted to Islamic Jihad or whatever. And that, I mean, that stinks, but it doesn't necessarily implicate Israel. It just kind of like,
it sure is weird.
It is weird. I mean, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, you had a very quick retraction of we hit the hospital and they deserved it. To it was an accident by Hamas, or
it's like the reverse of the usual IDF PR. Normally you start with the denial and then move to the kind of bragging. But
here's what I think happened, because these guys had been receiving phone calls. They got to evacuate the hospital like several times a day. They've been harassed with Israeli rockets all this time. You know what I think happened is they were like, all right, we're going to send them another nice friendly roof tap. Let's do it in a parking lot this time. And they didn't know there was a whole bunch of people sheltering in the parking lot. They get their smallest whatever, shoot it into the parking lot, and then they're like, oh shit, there were 500 people in there. Fuck. Shit.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
That would imply, of course, that the Israelis have any decency at all about bombing hospitals. But
this is true. Yeah.
Someone's mad at me on
kind
Twitter
of weighing how much decency like went into that decision making. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, well.
But I was reliably informed on Twitter that like they have lawyers look at every targeting decision they make, so it can't be bad.
Yeah, there is the assertion. We remember after the Great March of Return when they said they know where every single bullet was fired.
Yeah,
and then they stopped saying that.
They know. They just shouldn't be firing them there.
Yeah. Great.
Still, the ethnic cleansing continues, irrespective of whether or not this is, the IDF or PIJ or whoever the fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Since this
one guy
incident,
with a car full of propane tanks,
Yeah, exactly. Since this incident, it's been like, they've blown up a refugee camp and a school and a mosque. And that's in the past 8 hours. So, I mean,
fucking Christ.
all the schools are operated by the UN as well, which makes this like double bonus war crime.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love covering Palestine, guys.
It's great, isn't it?
I will say, I got a call from the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia because I went on Birthright, sorry. And they were like, hey, we're having a unity march for Israel. And I'm like, absolutely the fuck not. Like, I said verbatim, I think we should sit this one out. And they hung up on me.
Wait, did they call
you were doing
yesterday?
the kind of like marine recruiter trolling.
Yeah, they called me like yesterday. They called me yesterday or the day before. God. Yeah.
No, this is like the time we need to contact Liam. More than ever.
Our strongest soldier. Yeah. No, I went on a unity march against Israel, I guess, and it was the only thing besides being on my phone that has felt at all cathartic in any way. So, heartily endorse protesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then there's of course organizations that could use your money for relief, but some of that can't actually get into Palestine right now. And
all
in
of
your
it
country,
right now.
it might be illegal to donate right now.
Yeah,
I
if
mean-
your country is Germany, which has decided just to go like fully insane about this,
yeah.
France
Everything
is
I
not
see
far
out of-
behind them, from what I understand, too.
Yeah.
Everything I see out of the Berlin government, especially, is making me feel completely insane.
Oh yeah.
The amount of
Yeah.
things that they're putting under restriction. I honestly, it's so nuts. Like people saying that people who are doing, I think, slogans of in support of Hamas, whatever that means, like they should be reported to the police. Of course, that can easily
Yeah.
mean just
For
like free
what?
Palestine or anything like that.
Well, in Berlin schools now, wearing like any outward symbol of like Palestinian solidarity is like a disciplinary offense.
What?
you know?
What?
Yeah.
Fucking Germans.
Wasn't there that woman in France who was arrested for saying hello in Arabic?
Yeah. She said salam to some builders, and her neighbors reported her, and she was arrested by counter-terrorist police, whose rationale
Oh
after
my god!
the fact was, these days you can't be too careful.
Least racist French neighbors.
Yeah, I
Jesus.
think perhaps, and just a thought, this may be controversial. I think perhaps these days you can be too careful.
Mm-hmm.
Alex coming in hot with a
Yeah,
crazy
yeah.
take. Oh my god!
Yeah. So shit's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And getting worse.
Yeah. What's also bad in other news, this year's Hess
Did you
truck.
really put this in here? Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You put this in here on an equal fuss.
I love you so much. You insane man.
Remind me, right? The Hess truck is. So Hess is a store.
Hess is a gas station.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And every year, every Christmas, they release a gas tanker.
A
Like
toy truck.
Toy truck.
Yeah,
Yes.
a toy truck of some kind. Right.
Uh-huh.
It changes
Hess
every
trucks
year.
here,
It's a
Alice.
different theme. So in the past it's been like, I don't know, a regular semi-trailer. Sometimes it's like a truck with a helicopter on it. I think there's been one year they did a space shuttle. They do a whole bunch of
very
stuff.
poor ways of transporting gasoline.
This is true. They usually have they got flashing lights. They got a lot of fun things for the kids to play with. They're really big too, which is cool. But this year they've decided, as the Hess truck represents the mood of the nation, this year they've decided what they need is a big SWAT team van with a sort of police APC type thing inside it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it rules.
Scenes from the creeping police militarization,
Yes, exactly. This is to patrol the post-apocalyptic landscape caused by climate change, caused by the Hess company.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if back in the Bush administration, if you'd been if you'd drawn a bunch of oil company logos on a police vehicle, that was the most subversive leftist act that was possible.
Culture jamming. So we're gonna do Mickey Mouse drinking piss.
Yeah.
It's the cops actually work for Shell. Have you thought about this?
Yeah. This is actually no. They work for Hess apparently.
Yeah. Cornering the market on private law enforcement now.
Yes.
Smart.
So what do we got here? We got 74 lights, 4 realistic sounds. I wonder what they are.
Stop resisting. Sound
And
of
then
body cam powering
He's
down.
got a gun. He's got a gun.
Yeah.
Slide out battering ram. Are you serious with this?
Slide out battering ram on the police vehicle here.
This reminds
that's kinda
me.
cool.
This reminds me of the funniest thing that's maybe ever happened in a law enforcement context, which is when Steven Seagal became a part-time Louisiana sheriff's deputy for his TV show Steven Seagal Lawman, and in the course of doing a no-knock raid for that show, he drove an APC he drove the Hess truck through a wall of a guy's house and killed 10 dogs.
Oh my god!
Oh,
Jesus.
That's
Okay. Now, in
and
fairness, they
that's
would have killed the dogs anyway.
100%. But like
Well, they
normally
wanted
the
to,
cause
yeah.
of death, you know, in the sort of like cop dog interaction is like gunshot wound, not like
They have the
mulched-
balls to meet that dog face to face like men.
I just there's something about that story. It will never ever leave my mind. So yeah, thank you, Hess Truck, for reminding me of the
Wheelie
time
pop in
when
action.
Wheelie pop in action,
that's what Steven
rotating
Seagal was
turret,
doing. Mhm.
rotating turret with 2 spotlights, and free shipping and batteries.
I mean, to be honest,
Yeah,
when I
that's
was a little
solid.
kid, like I wouldn't have stood a chance against this, you know, and I would have developed some very strange attitudes about the police, which I definitely haven't.
So,
ACAB includes Hess truck cops.
yes,
Yeah, apparently.
exactly.
ACAB includes like the Hess Corporation.
Yes. And a third piece of news. So this should be relevant right about when we release this. The city of Cincinnati, Ohio, is selling its railroad, the Cincinnati Southern, the only municipally owned railroad in the United States of America. They're selling it to the other Palestine bombing company,
Norfolk Southern. Of
Norfolk
course.
Southern. Yeah.
Oh.
I
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
that is reprehensible.
Yeah.
3 seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
so
Wait, nice job, Roz.
yeah.
Wait, is it true that you don't pronounce it as like East Palestine? You pronounce it as East Palestine?
It's East
Well,
Palestine, yes.
because
Oh my
Ohio
God.
doesn't have a P sound, it's actually East Philistine. But you know, it just got romanized that way, and it just kind of stuck.
It's disgusting
yeah.
fucking Orientalism.
Edward Said warned us about this, you know.
He specifically called out Ohio.
Edward Said's "Fuck Ohio" and other essays.
Yeah.
Ohio will be eliminated.
Yeah. So, you know, they want to sell this for $1.6 billion. The proposal is they're going to put this into a trust fund for infrastructure, which means roads.
Oh, good. Highways. Yes.
It's going to be the first
more
trust
of them.
fund city. It's going to be really annoying, you know.
You know?
Oh, well, when it's studied abroad.
It's gonna like move to Manhattan instead of Brooklyn and like really try and find itself. You know.
And there's like the theory behind this is like, okay, we need to sell this railroad because railroads are going to be obsolete in 25 years when they renegotiate the lease. So it's better to have a liquid trust fund than a stranded asset,
Shut
right?
up,
Obviously,
you
that's
fucking
you know,
dweebs.
that's sort of bullshit. This has been supported by the Chamber of Commerce, the mayor, the city council, the unions, including trade unions in Cincinnati and the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, a bunch of environmental groups. It's still a stupid idea, and you should vote no. Yeah, it's issued 22 on the November 7th ballot. I know Railway Workers United has also come out against it, and they've only really, as of recording time, have started to hold any kind of public hearings on it. So you know, this is a bad move by the city. I think better to have the railroad maybe be able to get some use out of it. You know, because right now they just lease it to Norfolk Southern and say do whatever you want with it. You know, maybe you could have passenger trains on it in the future if the city keeps control, as opposed to selling it and then you know you never see that again.
Never capitalize on that, right?
Yeah. So, especially since I want to say Amtrak wants to do some stuff on this line eventually in the near future, it'd be better to have that kind of leverage. But whatever. So yeah, I would.
It just isn't a railroad story unless it culminates with that noise. You know,
Grunt.
Yeah. So anyway, I would recommend vote no on this, if nothing else, despite Norfolk Southern.
That's a good reason.
Yeah. All right. That was the goddamn news.
Jarring shift in tone.
Yes.
All right. We got to talk about this shitty boat. This is the MV Rosas. And I'm using it sort of like final name because it went through about like 3 or 4 or 5 of them.
Sounds like a marine version of alcoholism.
What, MV Rose?
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of a wreck, is the thing. Like, this was built in Japan as like
Sir Rosus and the Knights of the Round Bar.
Yeah. This was built as a dredger in Japan. And
oh god,
in like the 80s. And it just got like it fell out of the Japanese shipping industry into this kind of like international dark shipping world where it was renamed like 5 or 6 different times. It was reflagged to, and I have the list here, South Korea, Belize, Panama, and then like again and again and again. It was sort of like it's in this broad swath of the economy of like marine transport where not only is it very difficult to say who owns this, it's very difficult to say what it's carrying, where, and why. And I don't think anyone's going to sue us or assassinate us for this, but there are a few sort of legitimate reasons why that's the case, you know? Mostly you're trying to do stuff on the cheap, or you're trying to do stuff that you shouldn't, like break sanctions or, you know, disguise what you're moving where. This is so Rosus, by the time it is named MV Rosus, is ostensibly owned by a Russian guy called Igor Grachushkin.
Oh, okay. Well, I hate the stereotype, but goddamn, does that sound criminal?
First time owning his own ship, which might be a bad thing if you believe that he owned it at all, because it's also suggested that it was owned by this Cypriot guy, Charalambos Manoli.
Why do all of these people? I hate to say this, but I'm allowed to say this, as half of me is from the global south. All of these people have names that sound criminal.
Well, because
these are the mafia names.
Are criminals?
No, I know, but like these like triple like double barreled. I don't know. I've played too much Max Payne. You know.
No. You're right.
you know how much even a crappy boat costs. I mean, you got to be a criminal just to have the money to afford the boat.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
do you not believe these people are self-made?
This is also like just kind of with wink, wink, nudge, nudge about it.
Yeah. It's also it's a conversion, right? Because it's built as this dredger. What they do to turn it into like a general shipping thing is they just like tear all the stuff out of it, lengthen the hull so it's a stretch ship.
Right.
And then change all of the registrations, so it's then reflagged to Georgia and to Moldova.
And file off the VIN number.
Yeah, essentially, yes. Yeah. And I mean, there is no shortage of these. This is a huge proportion, like, you know, maybe even a plurality of like international shipping is like this, you know, where it's sailing under a flag of convenience. The crew are all like hired in. We'll talk more about the crew in a minute. And it's making sort of like sailings which are suspicious. Ostensibly, what this is doing is it is taking ammonium nitrate, which we'll get to in a minute, from a Georgian fertilizer maker to an explosives manufacturer in Mozambique, which in itself is a weird journey. However, it's been variously suspected that neither the origin nor the destination are actually, like, true.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
All we really know about this is that some ammonium nitrate ends up on board. It leaves Batumi in Georgia. And it's trying to go to Beirut in Mozambique, doesn't get there. Instead, it ends up in Beirut, and it ends up in Beirut for, like, again, very difficult to say reasons. Like, the owners maybe say that the crew were trying to extort them. The crew say that they, you know, couldn't afford passage through the Suez Canal because, you know, this guy who allegedly owned it wasn't even paying their salaries. It was barely seaworthy. And so when they end up in Beirut with these bags of ammonium nitrate, 2,750 tons of them, the Beirut port authorities take one look at it and they go, yeah, no, you absolutely cannot go back on the ocean with this. because of how absurdly dangerous it is. Next slide, please. All right, so what is ammonium nitrate, and why do we care? What have they got 2,750 tons of on this very shoddy looking boat?
It's a fun chemical. It's a salt, right? It's NH4NO3. That's so nitrogen, 4 hydrogens, and a nitrogen, and 3 oxygens, right? And those are the NH4 and the NO3 are the cation and the anion, respectively, right? So that's what makes it a salt, is those two put together. This is used for fertilizer a lot because it's very stable, doesn't lose nitrogen in transit like liquid fertilizers do. But it also has this fun property where when you heat it, it reacts with itself, right? And that's an exothermic reaction, which means it releases heat. So your NH4 and your NO3 turn into N2O and 2H2O plus heat. Both of those are released as gases. That means they expand very rapidly. So if you have this sort of runaway reaction that can occur, you get a boom.
Boom.
Great.
Yeah.
Great song by System of a Down.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next slide, this crew, they're all Russian and Ukrainians. I think mostly Ukrainians. The captain is Russian. And the ship gets impounded in Beirut, is seen here in the port of Beirut. And they send most of the crew home, but it's still got to have like 3 or 4 people on board, like the captain, the bosun, the chief engineer.
Sort of skeleton crew.
Exactly. Just to like keep an eye on it. And they don't like this because they haven't been paid. Grachushkin, the Russian guy, has like fucking disappeared at this point, so they're not going to get paid. They're stuck in port in Beirut, can't leave the ship, can't leave Beirut, and they're just kind of there with this ammonium nitrate, which they know is extremely dangerous. This is the kind of part where they start appealing to people. So they appeal to the Lebanese government in its various manifestations and get nowhere, which is going to be a recurring theme. So the captain begs the Russian embassy for help, and their response, like allegedly verbatim, is, "What do you want Putin to do? Send Spetsnaz?"
Yes.
Which is just like a beautiful moment in sort of like Russian bureaucracy to be like, listen, what do you want me to do? You want me to do my job as a diplomat? We don't really do that here, you know.
I mean, you sent Spetsnaz after the owner. You know,
that's true.
That's what
You're
you're
making
supposed
an
to
honorable rescue operation for the Russian working class.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm running the ship better than these guys.
Yeah. So then they try and go like public with it. And you see here their signs. Lebanese, release me. Let me go. The shipping press kind of take an interest. And there are a few articles from like 2014 or whatever that are like, these 4 guys are trapped sitting on a floating bomb, which is fantastic. If we go to the next slide,
This is also like a surprisingly common occurrence in international shipping, where owners just abandon the ship, and then there's some guys who are legally required to sit on the ship forever.
Nobody knows who owns the ship. Nobody knows who owns the cargo because no one's taking an interest in recovering it, which in itself is pretty fucking suspicious. We see here a couple of Ukrainians and their cargo. That's the ammonium nitrate in these bags, and it's just heaped up on deck like this. To the point that it like buckles a couple of the hatches that it's resting on.
Oh, good.
Unique. It's amazing how even before the war, there are still photos of Ukrainians casually sitting around a bunch of high explosives.
It's like that. And it's just like it's sitting on a pier, so like kind of out of the way in the port of Beirut. And nobody's kind of paying that much attention, and it stays that way for years. In total, right, this cargo will not move from the port of Beirut for 6 years. at which point it will move very, very quickly.
Right.
But yeah, so these guys are just like stuck waiting. Their boss, the next they hear of him is that he's bankrupt. So the Beirut Port Authority seizes the ship. It seizes the cargo. And after a year on board, they're finally these poor fucking guys get to go home.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to hear. Somewhat.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I bet it's gonna end real sad for me.
You know, we've got these like they had to go home to a nice, relaxing Ukraine.
Where nothing bad would ever happen again. Yes.
Yeah, and these bags of ammonium nitrate are still sitting there for the moment.
And the friendship between Russia and the Ukrainian nation remains to this day.
Yeah, it was forged in that moment, and it remains strong. Next slide, please. And here I'm going to rely heavily on Seamus because the thrust of this one was, what is Lebanon?
Do you just want me to go off of that prompt?
Yeah. Just you can just read the Wikipedia page. Lebanon is, a country.
The Lebanese Republic. It's I'm not. How do I? Okay. No, Lebanon is an extremely small country in the Levant, in the Middle East. It's kind of at the center of multiple different regional conflicts, which means that its small size does not matter. It has an outsized importance for sure. I mean, the Iranians are fighting the Saudis within influence systems there. The Iranians are also fighting the Israelis. All of it kind of goes through, Lebanese territory, Lebanese airspace.
And this one government, which is institutionally sectarian, which is an interesting sort of, it's a holdover of the peace agreement after the Civil War that the posts in any Lebanese government are like decided by what religion that guy is.
Correct. So the president has to be a Maronite Christian. The prime minister has to be Sunni, and the speaker of parliament has to be Shia.
Can you briefly explain what a Maronite Christian is, just for me?
Essentially, just like a Catholic.
Okay, thank you.
But like in the context of Lebanon.
Okay, thank you.
Gross oversimplification. Internet Catholics, do not come for me. I cannot go into the specifics. So the presidency has kind of come and gone through a couple of different people. Prime minister, obviously, but the Speaker of Parliament, Nabi Berri, has been the same speaker since the early 1990s. He's the kingmaker in that respect. Lebanese politics is infamously stagnant. Very little changes from year to year, and especially since the economic crisis started in 2019, it's been even more stagnant. Right now, Lebanon has spent over a year without a president. This happened before the economic crisis, where they spent almost a year trying to elect a new president, who eventually became Michel Aoun. Aoun left at the end of his term, and now they're still trying to elect somebody. In addition to that, there is no firm prime minister. There is a caretaker prime minister who resigned in 2022, back when I was still in college, and I've graduated. I have my diploma. I now live in Beirut, and he is still technically the prime minister because no president has been elected. And in addition, there are no other candidates for prime minister who want the job.
Yeah, no one wants it. But the other thing is, there's an image of Lebanon and Beirut specifically. Beirut, which at one time was the Paris of the East, right? I picked a very nice picture to show that it's it's beautiful.
That is a street in downtown Beirut that I go down very often. It is a absolutely gorgeous part of town with absolutely no businesses of any kind. It's completely gentrified to shit, but it is very well tended to, and it's very nice. Yes.
And on the left, I have
it's so nice there. They removed the yellow filter.
Wow.
On the left, I have a screenshot from I think it was Fox's homeland.
Yes, I remember
now,
this episode specifically.
Yeah.
It is a glorious part of the Homeland universe in which Al Qaeda, led by the horrible Abu Nazir, is holding a public meeting with Hezbollah by closing off.
As you do. Of course.
We are the
God.
world, holding hands,
Like
saying kumbaya.
What they're doing in
no
that scene,
singing.
what they're doing in the scene right now is that there are Hezbollah trucks going down Hammer Street, and they're closing off the neighborhood so that they can have this meeting in public, but also in secret.
Having like a New England town hall meeting.
Yeah.
I should say, and I think Alice was about to say this, but that is not what Hammer Street looks like.
No.
In any way, shape, or form. It's not like a narrow alleyway. Hammer Street is a very wide, very lively street with a Nike store, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts. There are numerous bookshops.
I'm sorry
and
that
coffee
you have to have a Dunkin'.
There are so many Dunkins in Beirut, man. There's two different ones in the airport now.
Maybe so. It is New England after all.
It's just
Public
New England.
reasons,
Beirut is just extremely East Boston.
That's why I call it the Boston of the Middle East. It's a term of respect.
Yeah.
Do they have any weird menu items on Dunkin' Donuts over there?
I don't believe so. I think it's pretty typical, unfortunately.
Ah, okay.
I wish they had something specific.
You guys get that Oreo shake with like 3,200 calories or whatever?
I haven't tested it, but I'm sure they love that shit. But essentially, the perception of also the idea that you could close off like gates to Hamra, which is just like a neighborhood near the university, absurd. Not based on anything. They filmed this in Israel.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God,
they filmed this
the
in Israel.
15-minute city is real.
Not only did they film it in Israel, but they got like Arabic-speaking graffiti artists to do some like threatening graffiti for people who don't read Arabic to do in the background, and all of them said shit like "Homeland is racist" in Arabic, and nobody knew, nobody checked, so it made it on screen, which is as they deserve. So yeah, I Americans, I think, and Brits to a lesser extent, still think that Beirut is the place that you go to get kidnapped by sectarian militias. And while I guess if you put your back into it, you could still get kidnapped by a sectarian militia. It's kind of we're not comfortable with that level of absurdity that you could get kidnapped by a sectarian militia outside of Dunkin' Donuts. So it has to be the like dusty, narrow street with the technicals and stuff.
Yeah. No. If I could take 30 seconds to pitch your audience. Beirut is my absolute favorite city in the entire world. I fell in love with it completely, entirely, almost like you would a woman. And it's beautiful, it's lively, it's exciting, it's wonderful, and also rent is extremely cheap, always has been. And you can get a wonderful apartment for what an apartment in New York City used to cost in more reasonable times. Great city, wonderful country. I hope to go back because right now I'm in Oregon and I hate the United States.
Yeah. So I do want to talk a little bit about the Lebanese.
We're moving it. Everybody move.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Lebanese
Please
economy.
don't move right now. But like in a month, maybe.
Yeah. Give you time to get back and give things time to calm down. So Lebanon is, as you say, a small country. It's a very import-dependent country.
Yes.
Which means everything has to come in like largely by port, largely in the port of Beirut. It's a nice deep water port, very well equipped. It also had a currency, the pound, which was pegged to the dollar, which is a bit like handcuffing yourself to a very strong idiot.
You rang.
and so if you recall about like 2009 as a consequence of the 2008 crisis, the dollar shortage, that fucked the Lebanese economy for to date, arguably. And that led to like this huge program with the World Bank doing what the World Bank does and demanding sort of maximal austerity, in exchange for bailout funds that had to be filtered through this like stagnant government that was like constantly working against itself. Next slide, please.
No one ever wants to go with the simple, easy solution that worked for Italy and Greece for so long. Just have a continually depreciating currency.
Yeah.
No one wants to
That's
go
right.
for that, even though it works great.
We'll pay ya.
So this is Warehouse 12. It's on the quay. It's like next to where the Rosas was moored. And you know, any port has a bunch of warehouses like this. This is like a bonded warehouse where, you know, the Lebanese port authorities control the access to it. And they look at all of these bags of fertilizer sitting in the sun, and someone finally goes, okay, we should move those, and we should move those into Warehouse 12. Store all of this like extremely hazardous material securely. Now, everything that gets seized goes into Warehouse 12. And I mean so like whatever, like cocaine, AKs, samizdat, like fertilizer, and in this case, fireworks.
I mean, you know, it's like, okay, we had to seize this ship carrying 400,000 cubic meters of fire and store that next to the AMFO.
Yeah. We've
not
built
AMFO,
these like
ammonium nitrate.
We've built these fuel oil bunkers underneath it. Now, to their credit, as far as I can tell, every single person in Beirut has at one time or another emailed their boss to say, you know how fucking dangerous this is, right? Like, everyone involved in this, the port authority, the police, the intelligence services, the military, the fire department, everyone has been like, this is a horrible idea. The warehouse is like visibly falling apart. It's like the sacks of ammonium nitrate are leaking. There's like tears in them. There's like fertilizer all over the floor and shit. This is going to be obscenely dangerous.
The thing to, I think, know about Lebanese bureaucracy, which I'm sure exists in many other great nations along the world, is that the business of, like, there are so many letters sent around different departments, different agencies, every single day, thousands, perhaps hundreds of millions. But the purpose is not to get anything actually addressed. The point is to have stamps put on them and for them to be inevitably sent to somebody else, which can then collect either fines or just straight up bribes. Or you wait for somebody with connections to move something along as kind of a personal favor.
Sure.
It's about as stagnant can be. And that is horribly annoying when you're dealing with something like a municipal complaint. And then it just escalates into something completely catastrophic when you are dealing with something, like, as you said, everybody notices. Everybody has been alerted to the fact that the ammonium nitrate in this warehouse it's a ticking time bomb of horrifying conditions. But everybody kind of thinks it's somebody else's duty or responsibility, and they just kind of keep passing it around for years and years and years.
Yeah. Nobody who like could claim to own this fertilizer is interested in taking it back. So it's just on the port authority now, and they try and like give it away. They try and give it away to the Lebanese military, to like explosives companies, and nobody really. They try and like resell it. Nobody wants anything to do with it.
Phone up ISIS, see if they want it.
Well, this is the thing. There is someone who takes an interest, and the reason why you know this is that this could have been much, much worse, as insane as that is to say, because they later worked out, this is from some great investigative reporting into this, that when this detonates, which we'll get to in a couple of slides, there's only 20% of the cargo left. So in between it coming to Beirut and then someone has abstracted the other 80% of this fertilizer, and no one knows who or where it went or why. Now, if I had to speculate
Oh, no.
about why a shitload of fertilizer might be going from Georgia to Mozambique and then unaccountably ending up in Beirut, I would suggest that maybe someone was trying to take that fertilizer to Syria and they weren't trying to use it to fertilize things, except very indirectly, you know? But no one knows. I can't prove that. No one can prove that. So, yeah, it could have been much worse. But much like sort of like emailing your landlord or texting your landlord, and you say, you know, the roof is imminently falling in on my apartment, and also
please
this
send
one
fertilizer.
Yeah, the roof is imminently falling in on my apartment. Everything is knee deep in water. Also, this one light switch doesn't work. The tactic is to ignore all of that and fix the light switch, right? So someone at some point says, "Hey, one of these doors into the warehouse is busted." Yeah, genuinely. I don't know.
I was going to pick up my Anfo or my ammonium nitrate.
I was smuggling it over the border into Syria, and I noticed, hey, this door squeaks like a motherfucker.
There's this door. Yeah, it squeaks a lot. Yeah, it's not very good. Someone should take a look at that.
Yeah, and so they do. So what happens is a crew comes out to weld the door. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Just so everyone knows, I keep saying ANFO. That's ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. Very common, very stable explosive.
It's what blew up Oklahoma City. You may be familiar with
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that was straight ammonium nitrate.
Was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, my bad.
Yeah. So...
Hi, it's Justin. So this is a commercial for the podcast that you're already listening to. People are annoyed by these, so let me get to the point. We have this thing called Patreon, right? The deal is you give us $2 a month, and we give you an extra episode once a month. Sometimes it's a little inconsistent, but, you know, it's $2. You get what you pay for. It also gets you our full back catalog of bonus episodes, so you can learn about exciting topics like guns, pickup trucks, or pickup trucks with guns on them. The money we raise through Patreon goes to making sure that the only ad you hear on this podcast is this one. Anyway, that's something to consider if you have $2 to spare each month. Join at patreon.com/WTYP pod. Do it if you want. Or don't. It's your decision, and we respect that. Back to the show.
We see here warehouse number 12, door number 11, and I get to do the thing because 17:45 local time on the 4th of August 2020, the fire department gets a call that warehouse 12 is on fire, and they send a team of 9 firefighters, 1 paramedic to fight the fire, and they go, man, there's something weird about this. This fire's like way too intense. It's making a bunch of like weird noises, which are probably the fireworks. They, you know, try and get the door open, and then next slide, please. Like not 10 minutes later, just goes up. You know,
Blam.
Yeah,
Jesus.
You can see like so many videos of this. I don't recommend it, but they exist. And this is really one of those things where, like, you know, it helped the investigation because you had a lot of video of this, you know, like mushroom cloud that went up from a lot of different angles. Yeah, everyone who like heard it remembers hearing this like roar, like fighter jets going over of, I guess, just air. And then one small explosion and then one huge explosion. And you know, it's this is one of the things where filming is very, very bad for your health.
Yes,
you want to like it because people go outside to film the big fire, right? Which is already kind of like, you know, the plume is going up, and they're either like on their balconies or they're like standing in front of their windows, and so when this explodes, like there's a ton of people who are looking directly at it. There's
Filming
glass
and
in front
stuff.
of them.
Oh
Yeah,
god.
and it's real it's like threads. It's horrible.
And I should say that the amount of glass that was broken in the blast, it's still not all cleaned up.
Mhm.
When you walk around Beirut, you will oftentimes come across big piles of broken glass that have not, they've all been gathered into this pile, but they haven't been cleaned up. It just kind of sits there because no one is around to take it back. So lots of like there's still destruct. I mean, we'll go into this, but yeah, alongside all the destruction from the blast that's still extant, those tiny reminders of just how expansive the blast was are still there, very large and small.
Also, Justin, I think you had something about the color of this cloud as well.
Yeah. So this cloud is very red, and that's not from like dust or anything or particular coloration. You would expect, okay, it's a little bit red from the yellow filter, right? No, that's a red orange cloud from nitrous oxide. It always, when you have a big ammonium nitrate explosion like this, it has this big red orange cloud, regardless of what color filter is applied to the local area.
Going over this in like a Montgolfier balloon, getting the biggest laughing gas high of your life.
Yes.
Next,
also inhaling smoke particles and dying, but
also that. Yes.
Don't worry about that bit.
Next slide, please. So it's hard to pick like one image to represent exactly how bad this was, because it was like devastation. I mean, people felt it in Cyprus. It's a huge explosion. Like tons and tons of TNT equivalent.
Yeah, you're talking about 1,500. I want to say tons of TNT equivalent. That's 1.5 kilotons. I forget how much the atomic bomb was on Hiroshima.
But it's like it's comparable. It's up there.
It's a really big
Hiroshima was
non-nuclear
15
explosion.
kilotons. So
15 kilotons. So it's 1/10 of a Hiroshima.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a fucking lot.
So yeah, I mean, obviously anyone in the port just gets vaporized instantly, which is kind of a mercy. Because everybody else, like every window in Beirut breaks. A bunch of the cladding just like is like blown off of buildings. A lot of the like structures of them are just like twisted and destroyed. A lot of buildings collapse. And there's a crater like 42 meters deep in the port here.
Jesus Christ.
You see all these big modern buildings with all glass buildings, and it's just all gone. You just see. Yeah,
like I mean, that's all of the like fanciest, like your hotels and like museums and shit like that. The like largest hospital in the city is like down the street, and it just like takes out entire wards of it. And yeah, in like terms of raw numbers, like killed like 220 people, I think.
But a little bit more than that, yeah, but under 300.
Yeah, and like in general, like the homelessness coming off of this is like one of the striking things.
I hadn't
because
even thought of that. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because like even if your house isn't like sustaining huge structural damage, if you like lose all of the windows out of it along with everyone else,
matter, does it? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and you're kind of like struggling to book a glazer at that point.
I was about to say, the one person to be good to be right now would be a glazer.
I mean,
hundreds of thousands of people were made homeless in that kind of instant, and at the moment, a lot of people have returned to neighborhoods in Beirut, but around the port itself, in neighborhoods like Gemeza or Mar Mikhail, the vacancy rate of these buildings in certain districts, especially around the old Electricity du Liban building, which was also gutted in the explosion. Some of these vacancy rates are approaching like 90%, over 90%.
Jesus.
Wow.
There are what you'll usually see is that there are single businesses on the first floor at street level, but then virtually every other apartment above it is empty and has been empty likely for months, if not years. A lot of landlords took the opportunity either to get out of Lebanon entirely, in which case you were lucky that you didn't have to pay rent anymore, or they demanded higher rents in return for repairing your entire apartment, or they told you to kick rocks entirely, and they helped gentrify the neighborhood, and they wanted more. They renovated it. They asked for better tenants, in which case mostly these apartments stay empty. It absolutely accelerated the gentrification of these working class neighborhoods that were around the port, which were already becoming major bar and restaurant districts, but are now almost entirely for people who do not live in these neighborhoods. They're awake, up until 2, 3 a.m., constantly partying, and the actual people who still live there have to appeal to the government just to shut down the music. Like, it has to go up that far.
Oh my God.
I mean, there's no capitalism like disaster capitalism, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a good time to do your sort of like land grab and open the worst pizza restaurant in the Levant that is not in Israel.
There are like 10 of those that I have been to around those neighborhoods. Alice is not kidding.
Next slide, please. Of course, one other consequence of this, one massive consequence of this is, remember how I said that Beirut is very import dependent? A lot of it comes through the port of Beirut. What's one really quick way to functionally make the port of Beirut inoperable for months?
43 yard crater in it. Yeah.
And
whatever.
That's, not only is all of the stuff that was already meant to be coming through there, but like this is where you would ordinarily bring your aid as well. So you just sort of like, I mean, not to sort of like over dramatize this, but the state that the Lebanese economy was in, it was like on its knees before this, and then there's just like, fucking hooks out one of the thighs from under it too. Like, just having this sort of like this huge like cornerstone of like how all of your economy works, that all of your imports come through, just be like a disaster area instead is, as you can imagine, a huge sort of burden. Next slide, please. I should also, this is going to be Justin's part for the main part, but I think we should probably explain why there's grain everywhere. It's one of the more surreal bits of this. Is like, why is this kind of like orange? It's because there's like corn all over it. Because of this, like, you can kind of see the ruins of it. It's the tallest building left standing in the port. This is a grain elevator, which is, again, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's so tall and because it's built so strongly, it kind of shields a significant like axis of Beirut from worse damage. It's just this like wall behind which you're not necessarily going to get as bad destruction. But on the other hand, that's where you keep all the fucking grain, and so all of the like grains, and you like go around with a shovel like sifting corn off of the ground. Like you just lose a bunch of food, and your capacity to store it also is fucked now. And this is August, so you're heading into like autumn, winter, which is cool because it still gets cold. Next slide, please.
Yeah. So this was a big ass concrete grain silo, and these are some of the toughest structures in existence today. They're notorious for being impossible to demolish, impossible to repurpose, impossible to sell. If you've ever been to Silo City in Buffalo, New York, you can see these huge abandoned structures. No one can tear them down. They're just too tough.
Kind of grain Flaktürme.
Yeah, exactly. Inspired Le Corbusier to invent modernism, so on and so forth. Beirut got theirs in 1970. That was comparatively late. A lot of these structures were built in like the 30s. But yeah, this is just a big series of reinforced concrete cylinders that you fill with some form of bulk product, usually grain, right? And then it's got a shed on top for mechanical equipment and offices. You know, so there's a lot more structural material in here than a typical building because it has to hold, solid grain instead of comparatively light stuff like people, right?
Yeah, and grain loves to explode, as we've talked about before.
Exactly. It's got to withstand an interior explosion as well. So what happened here is this thing took one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history to the face sideways, and part of it was still standing.
That's pretty fucking impressive. God bless the silo.
These are incredible structures, and that sort of protects a lot of the city that's to the east of the structure this way. Now, a lot of the city is unfortunately to the south of the structure, so that didn't necessarily come off too well as most of the parts of the port that handle break bulk. But it did do a lot of shielding to the east. And just to talk about how impressive this is, if you compare like the other famous structure that survived a huge explosion, which is the atom bomb dome in Hiroshima. Now that was at ground zero when the bomb blew up, right? Which meant that most of the force on it was vertical as opposed to horizontal. That's why all the walls are still standing, because compared to the weight that they can stand, the vertical force of the atomic bomb isn't actually that much. It's very hard to crush a building like that, but it's very easy to knock it over. This thing, the explosion was trying to knock it over, and it survived. And Beirut is better off for it. Other than all the grain being destroyed, obviously.
Yeah. Sad to say that the rest of it did collapse a couple of years ago, but it took that long.
The thing it's interesting because on the 2-year anniversary, yes, most of the columns did collapse, but there's still a couple of them still standing. So when you are walking along in those neighborhoods alongside the port, those silos are still there, and they haven't been cleaned up. They haven't been really touched. They repaired the stuff around the port in order to restore it to some sort of working capability. But nobody wants to do anything with the silos. One, because it would be too much work, which the government is allergic to. And two, there's debate over whether or not they want to keep it as like a memorial of some sort, as like a reminder of some kind. But there's no obvious public debate about it. There's no procedure to it. There's no tender, obviously. So it just kind of sits there. And I assume the point is that they wait for that to collapse. And then it's off their hands.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I would probably keep it as a memorial, because if you wanted to demolish it, the only way to do that is to do the explosion again. So that's
don't
not
recommend that. No.
Yeah, not a feasible option.
Yeah, I mean, apparently the bit that collapsed had been tilting since the explosion, and then the grain that was left in it just started fermenting. So yeah, and then that caught fire, and then a bunch more of it collapsed.
Just got the suddenly Beirut's largest distillery in that one silo. But so this is what saved a good chunk of the city from being hit much worse. Another thing is, this thing rolled over a whole cruise ship.
God damn!
Wow, I didn't know about this.
Yeah, so it was. It only had crew on board at the time, but this was the cruise ship Orient Queen. It was just north of the blast site. It sustained some pretty heavy damage from the explosion. 2 people on board were killed, but everyone else survived and got off the boat before it rolled over. And I think it's still there. It may not be still there. I'm not sure.
I definitely haven't seen it, but my eyes may lie to me.
I mean, the ship whose fertilizer this was, the Rosas, that's still in the breakwaters, sunk off of Beirut. Just because after they finally took all of the shit off of it. They just towed it out there, and then it just kind of sunk on its own, and it's still there.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a bit about the sort of the rescue efforts, which were remarkable how little the like government or the military like how little interest they seemed to take at the time. It was like ambulance crews and like just people for the most part in the early days. And then at some point, like some like international aid came in sort of like a bit later, and there was like pulling people out of the rubble for like weeks afterwards, as is sort of like usual for this kind of urban search and rescue stuff. But again, it's just like pure dysfunction, which I struggle to imagine the feeling, but I can at least kind of like plot its consequences, which I think we're going to talk about on the next slide. And this is much more like open-ended, but I want to talk about the kind of like political like aftermath of this, if you can even say aftermath, because it's still going.
Right.
Yeah. No. After the port explosion, the prime minister resigned. A bunch of other politicians resigned. But as is a similar situation right now, there really was no one who wanted the position after the fact. Lebanon is very much a sinking ship. So the amount of money that you can extract out of it is shrinking day by day as people kind of take their assets out and go elsewhere. So the prime minister at the time, Hassan Diab, who was already itself a politician they had to get out of nowhere. He was a professor at my university before they took him. He used to be education minister, but he had just been teaching, I think, computer science or some sort of economics at AUB.
Was sort of like kidnapped to be prime minister.
Sort of.
He was also service, we'll say.
I mean, listen, it happens to the best of us. I remember that picture of Saad Hariri with MBS where he's got his arm around him.
the most depressed man in human history, Saad Hariri. Hassan Diab was different because Hassan was kind of lowly enough that he could be convinced, but also he had a kind of insane sense of self-importance. He had written his resume, I want to say, was close to 1,000 pages.
Wow.
He had compiled himself into like a book that you could get. He had an extreme sense of self-importance about how much he could do for Lebanon, and then when he gets in there, obviously he can't do anything. So he resigns after the blast, and then he stays on for months and months and months because they can't find a new prime minister who could take after him. They consider Saad Hariri again, even though his resignation was what brought Hassan Diab into the prime ministership. Eventually, there are they find someone who was prime minister before, Najib Mikati, of a centrist party, to come back. He's a billionaire, one of the richest men in Lebanon, again, like Saad Hariri. Every interview he gives now, I watch them. He is so depressed about how little he can do. There was one just a couple days ago, I want to say, when he was interviewed by Al Jadid, where the reporter asks him about Hezbollah on the border and what the Lebanese government can do. And the prime minister, he's not wearing a suit. He's just wearing like a button-down shirt. And he just tells the reporter, like, are you in Lebanon or are you, in Caraco? Like, the situation here. Like, I can't do anything about this. This is out of my hands. I could just kind of watch and observe. He's depressed about it. He's upset about it.
Maybe it's better than the sort of the Aoun press conferences where he would say, like, if you don't love the government and want to kiss it on the mouth, you can go fuck yourself, and there would be like 2 days of riots.
What?
No, he genuinely said, like, if you can't find it in you to like have faith in the government, you should leave Lebanon. and this was in the midst of like 6
like
weeks
a crisis,
of like Arab Spring, sort of like depending on how you count it, like protests, revolution, whatever.
Literally, just if you don't love America, you can kiss my ass. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, there were protests that erupted after this. Obviously, people demanding that the government should fall, as they did in 2019. Obviously, it didn't happen. It kind of just fell out of national consciousness. The currency kept collapsing. Economic concerns became paramount. The poverty rate, national poverty rate, I want to say is around like 86% now. Um, uh, Food inflation is through the roof. Prices keep rising. Almost everything in the country is dollarized now, in the sense that you can pay with lira, but shops, restaurants, businesses would really prefer that you paid in dollars that are in pristine condition, that they can use to buy imports, which Lebanon is completely dependent on for basically all of its food supply, um, everything that it operates on. Again, as I mentioned before, there is no firm prime minister. There is absolutely no president at all. That position is completely vacant. The elections that happened after this, that were supposed to bring in new revolutionary voices, total bunk. Didn't do anything. 13 quote unquote revolution MPs were elected who had no consistent political ideology. The party that espoused a consistent left wing political ideology, the MFFD, none of them were elected. And so you were kind of at the mercy of these people who had no agreement in policy other than opposing the current power structure. But that spans the length between like milquetoast Lebanese liberals who believe that we should oppose Israel through like a BLM type deal, instead of firing rockets at them. And also people who think that Syrians should all be deported and should essentially be genocided.
Yeah, the Lebanese far right is a fascinating rock to kick over.
I'll spend 10 seconds on that, because it's one of the terribly fascinating thing in that a lot of Lebanese people, primarily Maronite Christians, don't believe that they're Arab, even though they speak Arabic. They believe that they're Phoenician and that their ethnic identity is distinct because they also speak French and English.
At the risk of making you spend more than 10 seconds on it, what's the I like half remember this, what's the fucking like tiny like splinter sect that are militants that are like not just like far right but like the semiotics of like the Nazis specifically, like the
Kataib.
Yes. Yeah.
Kataib, they were the guys who started the Lebanese forces who did Sabra and Shatila. They're right now, they style themselves supposedly nominally as a social democratic party that supports the evolution of gay rights and that specifically tried to take advantage of the protests in 2019 and 2020. They positioned themselves as an opposition party in that respect.
Are they still doing the swastikas and the Hitler and the armbands and so forth?
Well, not necessarily, but if you go down to Mar Mikhail, right next to Rewak Beirut Great Bar, great trans-friendly bar, there is a mural, a Kataib mural, where someone, I assume a Kataib fighter, I'm going to demonstrate here, is doing a Nazi salute, which is kind of curved up a little bit, but which is very obviously a Nazi-styled salute. This is because the founder of the party, Pierre Gemayel, verbatim, he told us to Robert Fisk, went to the Berlin Olympics and said, we should have that here.
We did the Bellamy salute. We did the
Middle
Bellamy
East
salute,
needs
man.
discipline. The Middle East needs discipline. And so he explicitly styled Kataib after the Nazis. And right now, the leader of the party is again. It's been in the Gemayel family ever since. It hasn't abandoned that ideological history.
Modernizing, liberalizing, social democratic Nazis. It's like I say, fascinating.
And these are the people that are ostensibly supporting, quote unquote, supporting the protest movement against government. So it's all cannibalistic. There's no real way out of the situation other than another election, which is probably going to be even less revolutionary because they've disappointed everybody so much. It's an entirely
It's weird to have a party that, heard someone say, National Socialist German Workers' Party and take the socialist part seriously.
No, they it's difficult for me to like. I keep saying it's like there's no hope. It's stagnant. Like it's circular, but it's difficult for me to like overstate just like how like fucked it is at the moment. Like an IMF bailout has been on the cards since again. I was even further back when I was in college. When I was a junior in college. I did an assignment in which I had to write for my opinion writing course about why Lebanon should refuse the IMF bailout. I had to take that position. It is 3 years later, and the IMF bailout has still not been authorized. In most other countries, an IMF bailout will be put on the table, and despite all the austerity measures that have been implemented, there was a recognition that they were in desperate straits, and they had no ideological barrier to it, and they would just take it. It'd be really easy. And now Lebanon is in the position where they're not opposing an IMF bailout because they're socialists or they believe that the Lebanese economy can be saved by progressive taxation and measures of this kind. They are austerity hawks, right? There are food subsidies that they want to keep up, but like they are capitalists through their bone. They want this money, but they also know that the strings put on them by the IMF would be too much for them to bear because it would require reforms that would slightly break up the corrupt machine that they've created, and they can't have that. So they are attempting a. You can tell me if this sounds sound, where they are hoping that the increased tourism numbers from this year, from last year as well, will put them in a better negotiating position with the IMF because they got money from tourists.
Yeah, I mean, I'm remembering that during those weeks of protest I talked about, that one of the sparks for them was trying to tax WhatsApp messages. So I'm not like overawed by like their like policy making impulses.
No, all they want is to try and make more money from the absolute poorest and make sure that the rich are free to make as much money as they want, but not in a traditional kind of the way you might imagine Republicans do, where they try to couch it in some other way. The Lebanese government just straight up says, hey, we know that you're using WhatsApp to get around the highest telecom rates in the world, basically. We're just going to tax that, and we're going to hope that you're all right with that, and that nothing bad will ever come of this, even though you're not seeing any improvement in any infrastructure, medical care, anything.
And I would say the tourism outlook for that region, at least in the immediate future, seems pretty poor.
The day before we recorded this, the US was like, the travel advisory came out.
They're putting it on par with Sudan, Syria, Ukraine. Not looking good. I left in such a rush recently. I left dishes in the sink and I left laundry like on the drying rack. So I stupidly assumed, hey, this will probably blow over in like a couple days. And I don't think it's going to. So
so this sort of like government barely worthy of the name was forced to do an investigation. So they were pressured to appoint this judge, this investigative judge, Fadi Sawan, who by reputation, as I understand it, was like not sectarian, not corrupt, good at his job, all of this. And as a result of that, a year later, they just kicked him back off of it. And as of now, they are still investigating. And that I think that investigation will go until the heat death of the universe.
Well, the thing is that there was, after that judge, I believe, there was another judge which got a little bit further, who was Tarek Bitar. And Tarek Bitar did the right thing in that he collected evidence and then he directed arrest warrants and asked for interrogations of people who were directly involved in the ministries that were responsible for the ship report. Wanted questioning from all these different people. And as soon as this would happen, the people accused would exploit loopholes in the Lebanese judicial system to stop needing to accede to these warrants, to these interrogation requests. And they would be held up for months as the judge would then be taken off the case and then inevitably reassigned to the case. And this would continue and continue and continue. And it eventually reached a point in which Hezbollah, supporting protesters, went down to the Palace of Justice in order to protest Tarek Bitar's reappointment, because apparently it had gotten too political, because he had been asking for people from Amal, which is a Hezbollah allied party, who were in control of the ministries responsible. It's not just like someone out of fucking thin air. They go down, they protest it, and then snipers from the rooftops,
Jesus Christ,
suspected to be from the Lebanese forces, start firing. And there was a gunfight in the Tayuna neighborhood, which was not terribly far from the neighborhood in which I live. It immediately became completely radioactive to the Dutch, because even if, like, I don't personally believe that Hezbollah, the Ammonium Nitrate, belong to Hezbollah, but Hezbollah absolutely does not want this investigated, because it absolutely implicates all of their allies in government. And once their allies in government are implicated, that jeopardizes their political king-making ability. It opens them up to questions about their complicity in the corruption in the government. It also would require investigation into all of their intelligence capabilities. Back in 2008, there was almost a civil war based on the fact the Lebanese government didn't like that Hezbollah had a separate telecommunication system that they just weren't telling people about. And they tried to shut it down, and then there were gun battles in the middle of Beirut. Everybody...
Posting or death.
Yeah.
Nobody wants... it. Like, every party, to some extent, even if they're not technically guilty, it exposes all of them to a certain extent.
That's so true of, like, any of the investigations abroad as well. Like, the reason why I mention, like, Syria, and why I mention, like, Mozambique and all of this is that, like, journalists have been through and they've tried to trace all of these, like, shell companies to find out exactly who owned this ship, who owned the cargo, and where it was going. And the place that it's led is this company Savaro, and a Ukrainian oligarch called Volodymyr Verbanov. So the ammonium nitrate probably came from Ukraine, and this company was, like, operated by another shell company called Interstatus, and the director of that has said, oh yeah, I know who owns it, and I just won't say.
That's so cool.
And I will say, for legal reasons, I'm going to phrase this very carefully. I'm just reading from the Wikipedia here. There's this Syrian-Russian businessman.
That's fun.
Yeah. He's a fun guy, George Haswani. So he's he's in with Assad big time, also Putin. Thus my sort of implications about Syria. And they asked him about this. And they asked him, like, how come your company runs through the same shell company that owned this ammonium nitrate? And he said, and this is a quote, I am living my life normally and laughing because I am someone who knows well that I have nothing to do with this matter at all. Which is, I think, the funniest possible thing you can tell the haters.
You're right.
Oh my god.
Live, laugh, love.
Thanks for thank the haters
This
for
is what I
making me
say
famous.
when I'm asked if I'm thinking about my ex-girlfriend. I'm living normal. I have nothing to do
I am
with this
living my
matter at
life
all.
normally and laughing. Yeah. New Twitter bio as well. Yeah. And I mean, maybe he does. Maybe he is living his life normally and laughing. But yeah. So there is one small glimmer of hope here.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, I know. This is like relatively new news. This is from this year. In June of this year. So some of the survivors sued this holding company, Savara, because it's registered in the UK, because we love to be a sort of like hub for world shady middleman dealing. And although they didn't make them disclose who the owners were, they did force this company to pay like about $1 million in damages directly to victims, which is not much, but it's something, and it opens them up for more liability in other jurisdictions, they hope. So, one of the claimants says that there's a quote from him in this Reuters story about it, where he says that it's telling that like everything that's moving forward is outside of Lebanon. That's the only place where there's progress. But
no,
yeah,
I would say in addition to that, like when we talk about targeting Iranian officials for investigations, certain things, and we talk about like, oh, we'll do things in Europe, we'll sanction them from the United States, they won't get anywhere near American assets. That doesn't affect like Joe Schmo on the Guardian Council, who was not taking vacations in Paris and in Berlin, typically. But Lebanese officials, that absolutely affects them. People in Kataib, people in other parties, other than, I guess, Hezbollah, they love being in Europe. They love being in Switzerland. They love going to American colleges and French universities and living it up on the European dime. Being shut out of those systems is absolutely something that they fear to some extent. I mean, Saad Hariri isn't even in Lebanon anymore. He doesn't want to stick around. He lives in Dubai now. He flies around all these different places. They don't like being in that country. That is I think, that is the only like small reprieve in that they really they're closely interconnected with the European system.
There is a lever there if anyone in Europe has any interest in pulling it or being forced to pull it.
Yeah, but they keep threatening to pull it. I mean, the French Macron has been trying to like mediate the IMF bailout and government formation for years and years and years. He's always saying like, hey, I'm going to sanction, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then he never does it. So yeah, it's always present and he can pull it and it would actually have effect, but he chooses not to.
Just doesn't want to do it.
For reasons that are beyond me, but hey, I'm not the fucking Elysee Palace or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what have we learned from all of this? Other than surround every port with grain elevators.
Which are fairly indestructible.
They did a bunch of like investigations after this happened. A bunch of like port authorities got scared all across the Middle East and beyond to be like, wait, how much of this shit do we just have lying around? And there are a bunch more like close calls like this. They very, very nearly sort of like missed. Like in Iraq, that they found like tons and tons of this in Qasr, just like fucking like sitting out that they had to like remove.
This is the great thing about containerization is you can have the same amount of ammonium nitrate hanging around, but you don't know about it because it's in a container.
Totally opaque,
Out of sight, out of mind, right until your port goes up in flames.
Yeah. So, this is well, what did we learn? I mean,
I guess like
store your shit good.
Yeah.
Maybe I oil your bureaucracy a little bit. You have like one guy that works every ministry who does listen to something. That's his assigned role, and everybody else can kind of fuck off. But like have that one guy.
It's a really weird system to end a civil war by going, okay, well, we'll just do strict religious quotas.
Yeah, don't do that. That is not worked out for like anybody. I
Yeah.
agree. It's better than the system that existed before the Civil War, where Christians had their supremacy was enshrined into law, where they had more seats in parliament than the Muslims. But we can also just get rid of all of the quotas. That might
Maybe.
have solved some third things,
Yeah.
but who knows? I'm just a simple boy from Madison, Wisconsin. I don't know nothing about nothing.
I'd say
That's the whole point of this podcast, Seamus. I'm in good company.
Yeah.
Big thing we learned is if there's something on fire within view of your apartment that may explode,
Stay indoors.
don't look at it.
Yeah.
If you have to film it, put a stationary camera out. You should not look at the explosion. You will have shards of glass in your eyes. That's why in the movies, the cool guys are always facing away from the explosion when it happens.
We don't have a generation that has that like duck and cover experience, that knows not to like be looking out at windows at explosions. Little PSA there to end on.
Yeah. Just walk away from the explosion in slow motion. It's much safer.
People don't know how to do that anymore because of streaming movies.
It's true.
And now it's all about
and wokeness.
Yeah, all about Disney Plus. They don't do that shit anymore. It's fucked up.
Well, we have a segment on this podcast called Safety Third.
Oh,
we didn't even do this last time because
we
ran too long.
mark.
Oh no, it's just too long.
Now we've adjusted our
yeah.
time far more responsibly, and
That's
now
right. Got to like
we can invest
hour and a half. That's a movie,
Yeah.
and a short movie these days.
Yeah, exactly. Hello, Raz, Alice, Liam, and guest, if applicable.
Yeah, you did it.
Nailed it. Yeah.
The following is my submission for our beloved closing segment. It involves many of our favorite elements, namely gross incompetency, British Empire fetishists, museums, and targeting bank buildings with artillery, and a government agency trusting university students to handle both homemade explosives and extremely antique firearms. On top of this work site was mentioned in the Halifax explosion episode. Good callback there. And I believe a joke about this very thing happening was made. Good work on the foreshadowing.
Did you accidentally shell Halifax?
Oh, we'll get to that.
They shouldn't keep the cannons pointed at Scotiabank if they don't want us to shell it.
Oh, it's actually pointed. I found out today it's actually pointed at TD Bank.
Ah.
The danger brothel in question is the Halifax Citadel National Historic Site in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, we were there together, man.
Yeah. I worked at the Citadel for a number of years and can with confidence say that no job I've had since has been as nonchalant about safety violations.
Cool.
I will spare us all the lengthy explanation of what exactly this place is, both because we have access to the internet and because it could honestly be an entire episode on its own. In short, it's a large Victorian-era fort staffed by military reenactors.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The site has been managed and staffed by the same organization since the early 1990s and has been the employer of some of the most bat-fuck unhinged individuals I've ever met or heard of. Over the course of my tenure there, I had frequent encounters with both coworkers and management that left me seriously unsure as to whether or not we inhabited the same reality. An uncomfortable amount of these conversations left me questioning if they really thought they were actually a member of Queen Victoria's armed forces.
Oh no. Oh no. You want to have a clear separation between on and off stage with your living history.
Exactly. I'm convinced that the water on site was cursed with the gin. Because boy, did that place run on spite and sadism.
Hey, it really is Victorian. I mean, maybe that's a different kind of gin,
Yeah. It was not uncommon to witness or hear of a colleague being pushed to complete physically demanding tasks while exhibiting very clear signs of extreme heat exhaustion or heat stroke exclusively for the pleasure of whichever corporal or sergeant, both of those in quotes, happened to be in charge that day. I put corporal and sergeant in quotations because while they were all very much like you to believe that they were actual NCOs and would sign off on emails as corporal so-and-so, they were tour guys with an extra stripe on their uniforms.
I mean, if they're like hazing you, I feel like you're entitled to like veterans benefits at this point.
Yep.
Like at this point, just make it an actual part of the military, like the USS Constitution, you know?
I could
The
make
USS
an entire
Constitution, isn't that where they filmed that one porno? Right?
Very specific.
Yeah,
This
I'm
used-
alarmed at how ready you were for that.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. I remember this. This was like a piece of knowledge I learned years ago, where they filmed 2 like multi-million-dollar pornos on the USS Constitution.
Oh my god!
wow.
Pirates, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they just
Amazing.
they lied
Wow.
to them, and they said that it was a Disney movie, and then they just filmed pornography in all of the chambers at this.
That's incredible.
Wow. Wow.
Sorry.
Yeah, like do like that, or like the one infantry regiment the U.S. Army has that just like dresses old timey for fun. Like
What, film a porno of them?
What?
Yeah, film a porno of these guys. What about this is unclear?
Yeah. I could make an entire podcast dedicated to the stupid shit that I had to endure during my years there, but the reason I am writing you today is to recount the crown jewel of fuck-ups that happened there. Dear friends, I want to tell you about the time we nearly harpooned the TD Bank building.
Yes, we called our shots. Well, their shot.
Yeah. When I was at the Halifax Citadel, I was like, that cannon is pointed right at that building. Anyway. In a tradition dating back to the founding of the city, a cannon is fired from atop the hill every day except Christmas to mark 12 o'clock noon. Hence the name, the noon gun. I do not know how many times a tourist would ask, excuse me, what time does this noon gun go off? Depending on my mood, sometimes I would only answer with a simple yes.
You've been too busy getting smoked by like a fake corporal all morning.
The procedure for firing the gun is the same as it was in the mid-19th century. The movements are taken straight from a drill manual and is complete with lots of shouting and rigid movements. If you ever witness and wonder, why the fuck are the shouts literally incomprehensible? It's because they've all done this so many times that it's become muscle memory, and the ones shouting like to see just how unintelligible they can make themselves while still having their squad perform without crushing someone's toes or doming someone off with a large wooden-handed spike that they use for maneuvering the gun. Briefly, the process is the following. Roll the gun back from the embrasure, perform a quick inspection, use various ramming implements to clear the inside. The first has a large corkscrew on the end and is used for clearing out any pigeons or other garbage that might be hiding inside.
Oh my god.
The second has a large sponge on the end and is used to swab the inside of the barrel to ensure that there are no embers or hot spots that could cause an accidental detonation. Then you use the aptly named ramrod. A charge is placed at the mouth of the barrel and then rammed all the way to the base of the gun. Due to the length of the gun in question, the ramrod is approximately 8 feet in length with a flared base on the pushing
For safety,
end.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The diameter of the base being only slightly less than the barrel. While it wouldn't make a completely airtight seal if the gun were fired with the ramrod still in the barrel, the 1 pound black powder charge would put some significant oomph on it. Now take a guess where this story is going.
Oh dear.
Now you roll the gun back into the embrasure and insert the friction tube, which is the thing that makes the spark, and you wait for the one to yell fire, or the one in charge to yell fire. On the day in question, almost all these steps were followed correctly. The misstep being, the man in charge failed to ensure the ramrod was removed from the gun before having his crew move the gun back into the firing position. Had that day's firing gone ahead, the TD Bank building in downtown Halifax would have been the very rapid recipients of a charred ramrod harpoon. Luckily for those thieving bank bastards, an astute security guard outside the fort walls noticed a protrusion emanating from the embrasure with only seconds remaining until firing. As many of these security guards are retired members of our armed forces, they immediately recognized what was happening and were promptly shouting into their radio to abort the firing. The message quickly reached the gun crew, who were able to retrieve the ramrod and proceeded with the firing with only a slight delay.
Oh, wow. It's like a Van Damme movie moment.
Yeah. The man in charge for that day's firing was himself very nearly fired, somehow managed to keep his job, likely on account of the place being an old boys club and he had been there since the 90s.
What, the 1890s?
Probably.
Oh!
In the aftermath, he was no longer allowed anywhere near any weapons of any kind and faced a kind of punishment worse than death, a demotion from Her Majesty's Victorian Army.
This is why they couldn't fire him, is they couldn't find the manual for how to cashier someone.
To this day, the TD Bank building in Halifax continues its decades-long streak of being unperforated and almost certainly completely unaware of how close they were to losing that streak. Many thanks from a longtime listener. Your show has brought me many laughs over the years, and I look forward to many more.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I
That
will
was a
also
good
take
one.
credit for this.
That was a good one.
Well, that was safety third.
Bow, 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 bow.
Shake hands with danger.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Our next episode will be Chernobyl. Does anyone have any commercials before we go?
Yeah, Seamus.
Oh,
Thanks so much
yeah.
for coming on.
Yeah,
if
thank
people
you
want
for
more
coming on.
Seamus, where can they find them?
They can find it at a website that I write at, which is my own. Seamus-malakafzali.com is a brilliant website in which you can read all of my horribly depressed musings about the state of the Middle East in what I hope is an informative, well-reasoned way. I guess would be the operative word there. I've been told people enjoy it in
Very
ways
good.
that
They should follow you on Twitter too.
They should also do that. I always appreciate getting, as I've gotten very recently, very frenzied messages that are both very supportive but are also deeply inquisitive in a way that I am uncomfortable with.
Right. So subscribe to the Substack, follow you on Twitter, and do not violate your boundaries.
Be weird, right?
Yeah, exactly. Don't be weird. Don't be weird.
I am a human being and I live in my house and I would like the wall to remain there. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have a Patreon.
Yes.
You can subscribe to it. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already.
Yes. I was about to say very close to the 100,000.
Very close. Very close.
Very close.
Probably got about 7 days left as of when this podcast comes out. So anyway, smash the subscribe and like
Ring
button,
that
I
bell,
guess.
yes.
That's right.
Ring the bell.
I'm doing a Mr. Beast face right now.
I cracked my jaw doing that. That's fun.
I will give my
Yeah.
personal recommendation for the Well, There Is Your Problem YouTube channel. One of my
Thank
favorite
you.
activities is listening to my old episode on repeat and thinking about how funny these guys are and also how funny I am.
Yeah. We're hysterical is the main thing.
It's great.
Yes.
It's a great channel.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I think that was a podcast.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah. What are the odds?
Yeah, time to go back to reading Israel-Palestine tweets and panicking.